listening to The Phillip Jordan Show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Phillip Jordan Show on this Friday, January 12th. And I am your host, Phillip Jordan, in-studio host and producer of Nothing Was Football on 96.9 The Legend, and also the Auburn writer for Last Word on college football. What the last few days we have had pertaining to coaches. Of course, we're here in Dothan, we're here in Alabama. The biggest news we're all talking about, the retirement of Nick Saban. Probably a lot of us never thought we would hear those. We knew it. We just didn't think we would. It's happened. Nick Saban has retired. He talked to ESPN's Reese Davis on Thursday, said a lot of things, a lot of interesting things, and we're going to dissect that today. The original plan, y'all heard me talk early in the week, Monday's show and on Wednesday's show, that I was going to do a big AFC, NFC, first round NFL playoff preview show here on Friday. We're still going to do that. Matt Barbato from Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros will be on with me in just a little bit to preview. That's the second half of the show. But Nick Saban retiring. I knew I had to bring somebody on to discuss that, to talk about the retirement of Nick Saban. And a guy I've had on a lot recently, talking all things Alabama football, AJ Spurr from Roll Tide Wire. He will be on in just a few moments. We're going to go into the how it all happened, the timing. Nick Saban's still going to be around the program. If you checked out anything on Thursday, that's a big part of that. Health seemed to be a big part of the decision making. Not that Nick Saban is sick or ill, just at 72 years old, 14-hour days are tough. And he just cannot give what he used to give to the team. So he is retiring. And I think a lot of that has to do with transfer portal, NIL, just a lot more of his own college coaches now than they used to be. And we've heard Nick Saban talk multiple times. Is this what we want college football to be? So you got that on the show. You got Matt Barbato. We'll get through all 6 wildcard games for this week. So this is a much longer show than what you're normally used to. Usually about 30, maybe 40 minutes. We're going a solid hour here. Now, if you're just listening to the open and you're like, man, Phil, I don't know if I can hang an hour, I will post these individual interviews up to as well on YouTube and here on the feed later on in the day individually. So if you just want to check those out individually, they're there. But if you want to listen to this whole show, which I really hope you will, we'll have that as well. So a lot of stuff to get to here on the show. I'll take a little 20-second break, let you guys hear how you can find the show. And then AJ Spurr will join me for Roll Tide Wire on the phone to discuss the retirement of Nick Saban. You can check out the Phillip Jordan Show podcast over at wiregrassdailynews.com or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review, and I will read it on a future edition of the show. And if you leave just 4 stars, you are just a straight-up hater. You can email me at sports.phillipjordan@gmail.com. Joining me on the show first today, coming in last minute, very appreciative of this, AJ Spurr. You can check him out over at the Roll Tide Wire. Of course, we have got to discuss Nick Saban retiring on Wednesday, announcing that retirement, shocking everybody. I'm sure it shocked this guy on the other end of the line. And joining me on the phone, like I said, is AJ Spurr, Roll Tide Wire. And AJ, I appreciate you coming on short notice, and just wow. You always knew this was going to happen eventually, but still the news was still stunning on Wednesday.
You know what? You're right. This was one of those things, and I was thinking to myself just a couple weeks ago as the season was coming to an end, when is it going to happen? You know, how will everybody react? What will, the Roll Tide Wire site, what would it be like? What's going to be the atmosphere in Tuscaloosa? There's so many questions that I had running through my mind. And now that it's happened, none of them were really answered, but even then, none of them are that important at this point. I think as soon as everybody heard the news, it wasn't a, flow of questions that needed to be answered as much as it was just a realization that, whoa, this inevitable day that we all knew would come finally came. So what now? So it's interesting to see how everything's working in Tuscaloosa and behind the scenes, especially how you and I had talked off air about different programs having different, types of coaching searches and how the fans react. So this is uncharted territory for most Alabama fans. Well, not most, but many Alabama fans. So it's just interesting to see how everything here is shaping out, and we could even have an answer very, very soon.
Yes, let's hope not before this podcast goes up. Let's hope at least they could hold off on that. Just help me out a little bit on that. Yeah, you see, and look, I'm 37, so I remember pre-Saban. But like you said, there's a lot of fans out there, the younger fans, like that first generation of Alabama fans that just they only know Nick Saban as the head coach. Kind of very similar how there was a big bulk of the fan base that only knew Bear Bryant way back in the day. But, older fans or people around my age do remember the Mike Shula years, the Mike Price debacle, Dennis Franchione 2 years, Mike DuBose. Gene Stallings was kind of like that gap between the Bear. They had some hiccups there too as well. But it is one of them interesting things for, like you said, a lot of Alabama fans. This is on uncharted territory because all they've known is Nick Saban.
And, there's that and the fact that for Alabama, this is the first time there's been a coaching search in the era of social media. Mm-hmm. So while Alabama fans have had the privilege over the last 17 years to kind of sit back and watch other fan bases squirm around, looking under every rock, nothing going unturned when it comes to trying to find an answer. The flight tracker people, who I absolutely love, by the way. For Alabama, with one of the biggest fan bases in all of college football, this has taken over, at least for me. I don't know about you, Phillip. My social media is nothing but Nick Saban and or who replaces Nick Saban. So this is just wild to see.
Yeah, I've had people I know that are Alabama fans have called me a lot, asking what I think, because people know, I'm an Auburn writer, but I keep up with pretty much a lot of this football stuff, college, high school, pro, whatever, intrigues me. And it is kind of wild. It's taking up a lot of my time scrolling on X and Facebook and all other stuff, just kind of wanting to see who the next guy was going to be. And, we can jump into that too as well. Interesting names that popped up. It seemed like Dan Lanning was the first name everybody was really jumping on. Speculation with him. Mm-hmm. I know there was obviously a false report that he was in Tuscaloosa yesterday and today. I'm like, wow, that's really quick working. But hey, look, as a guy that covers Auburn, I know how these things go. I know you have to be patient. It's one of the things you can't get too excited. You just got to wait. Wait for the athletic or wait for the official announcement. But actually, let's backtrack. Let's not go into the candidates quite yet. Just the timing of it all. You see reports that Nick Saban, he was still working, interviewing receiver coaches potentially. He was at a teleconference, SEC coaches, all that stuff. And then we see the news break. What was your opinions on just kind of like the timing of it all?
So at first, seeing the report that he had shown up to work just as every other day, was on the teleconference, was conducting interviews, and that he announced it at a pre-planned, already existing meeting that was there for him to address the team on what I believe is the first day of classes on campus in Tuscaloosa. So to me at first, it was a shock. This was an abrupt, spur of the moment thing where Nick Saban realized, what, it's time to just hang it up and go out right now, which albeit feels very Nick Saban-esque when you think about, he doesn't want this, big tour, anything grandiose. He just said, I'm not feeling it anymore. We'll go ahead and just pack it up and call it a day. After, having roughly 24 hours now to think it over and reading and hearing some of what he's had to say himself on, the whole situation, Phillip, what I've gathered is that over this past season, he somewhere along the line made the decision that this was probably going to be it for him. And he cited, his age, possible health concerns, and just the fact that, Nick Saban is a person. He enjoys life. And he said it himself. These are 14-hour-long work days that he can no longer keep up with. And he only wants to do things if he's going to be the absolute best at it. And being the head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide at this point, if you're not able to put in 100%, 24/7, then you're not going to be able to maintain, being the best program in all of college football, which leads me to believe that this decision was made a while ago. He carried it over into the playoffs. He held on to it until the ending of, the season with the national championship coming to a close. And he probably only told family and who I would assume to be Greg Byrne, because I know a lot of people thought, well, they got to have contingency plans in place. They would just immediately pass the torch the second he retires. Well, a lot of people have to think. Everybody's got a mouth, Phillip. People love to talk. If they were to have reached out to, whoever's on their short list of candidates and said, hey, this is going to be it for Nick. We're gonna go ahead and move ahead and interview a couple people. We're interested in you. That would spread like absolute wildfire. Now you have Nick Saban news about retiring in the middle of the 2023 season. You have the recruiting trail falling apart on Alabama, and just fans in general would be losing their minds for the remainder of the season. I don't think that they told agents. I don't think anybody knew except for the only people that needed to know. And as far as that contingency plan goes for the next coach, I think all they have is or was a short list of coaches that maybe Greg Byrne and or Nick Saban compiled. And they're just, going down the list now. And the 72-hour thing that everybody's been seeing in reports, that Alabama would have a new head coach hired and named within 72 hours of Nick Saban retiring. We're already 24 hours, a little bit over that at this point of recording. And, nobody's been named, but 48 hours remain, and Alabama has the power and the money to get whoever it is that they want, and assuming that person is willing to leave, which is why I think that 72 hours may seem a bit ambitious to a lot of people. But I know that Saban, Byrne, and the rest of the administration at the Alabama Department of Athletics, they're comfortable knowing, somebody on that list is going to say yes, and they'll be able to get them, no matter the price, no matter the buyout, no matter what it takes. They'll get somebody that they want. They will not settle.
And we talk about timing and obviously the 14-hour days. And look, it's even more of a grind being a college football coach now with NIL, transfer portal, and all that other stuff. Do you think maybe that also had a factor in this with him retiring? Because, he has not come out and ever said he's against those things. And I don't think he is. But he has also, I don't know how many times, AJ, I've heard Nick Saban say this, is this what we want college football to be? He has said that multiple times. Do you think that had a factor?
I think it would be silly to assume or infer that it wasn't a factor in determining, whether or not Nick Saban was going to retire. We have to be honest here, though he didn't, like you just said, come out and say that he hated these things and didn't want them to be a part of the game. He warned college football of the dangers of those things. And we also got to remember, being a head coach of a college football program is not just, coaching the players. You are the general manager of, this collegiate program. And when you're at Alabama, the power and the standard that comes with that includes being a general manager of massive proportions, working the transfer portal, working the recruiting trail, figuring out NIL just in general, how it works. I mean, Alabama's going after the biggest and best recruits there are every single year. And with NIL now, they're learning how to, play the system, get their money, which good for them. That's what they're supposed to be doing, I guess, in a name, image, and likeness era of college football. But I think for Nick Saban, it didn't push him out. I don't think it ran him out. But I do think that the transfer portal and NIL expedited that process purely because of the amount of energy that it would require for him to maintain, excellence on the recruiting trail and the portal while also figuring out and dealing with NIL. So I do think that it played a role. I don't think it pushed him. I don't think it forced him out. But it would be silly to not say that it had a hand in his retirement here.
And lastly, before we get into who could be the potential replacement for Nick Saban, and those are words I never thought I would say behind a microphone. It just, feel like the day would ever get here, but it's here. So obviously on Thursday, and everybody listening, we're recording this Thursday evening, almost at 6 o'clock when we hit the record button. And just looking at some stuff he said, that he is still going to be around, still involved with the university. He's still going to be there in Tuscaloosa. He'll be there for players, and he's still working. I mean, the man just doesn't know how to quit. Now, I look at that. I might be a little devil's advocate here. I look at that. Could that be a positive or negative? I think it could be both. Him there is awesome. It's great. It could be a real sounding board for the next coach coming in, particularly a younger coach. And also just, kind of ease things too around the fan base, around the program. But also at the same time, could that be a problem with the coach who's coming in if he's not connected to Saban, looking over his shoulder? I only say all that just because again, everybody knows I cover Auburn Flashburn college football. Two different situations I know, but Pat Dye had a shadow over the Auburn program because he was there. He had an office, blah, blah, blah. What is your feeling on that, Nick Saban still being involved with the program after retirement?
I think that the cons, if we're just weighing pros and cons here, I think that the cons are very easy to see, or the possible cons, that is. You have a coach who everybody that's being considered is pretty young, right? So you have what would be a young coach overseeing this behemoth of a program with the guy whose shoes you're filling, possibly breathing down your neck, critiquing everything you do. And with Nick Saban, a lot of people consider him synonymous with perfection or as close to it as you could possibly get when it comes to college football. If you do not match that or come close to it, people are going to be calling for your job. People are going to, ask why Saban isn't there. There's going to be people also claiming, whoever is in charge, that they are just a puppet for Nick Saban to use so that he doesn't have to be, as hands-on as he would have been should he still be the head coach. There's going to be negatives no matter how you look at it. That being said, I think that the positives outweigh those cons. I mentioned it on social media that having Nick Saban still be active with the program and even involved now in an administrative role, this is going to benefit Alabama greatly on the recruiting trail and the transfer portal, because now not only do you still have Nick Saban there, able to speak to, able to mentor, able to work out with these players and practice, be there on the practice field. You're also going to have a head coach who, if it's any one of the names that I'm sure we'll discuss here in a second, having that coach plus Nick Saban present, I mean, if Nick Saban alone was enough, this is just making the deal even sweeter for any recruit that's considering Alabama. And not just that, Phillip, but I really do think that this may, and I'm probably going to wish I hadn't said this may give us some insight as to who is strongly being considered for the job, because if we're looking at Mike Norvell versus Steve Sarkisian, and I'm not giving any predictions right now, I would say, which one of those two has a history with Nick Saban? Which one of those two would be most comfortable with Nick Saban on the field while they're taking over as head coach? To me, that's a simple answer. Now, I don't think that this is going to tell us who is the coach, especially between those two. But I really do think that if you have a former, Alabama coordinator, assistant, somebody that was a part of the Nick Saban coaching tree, I think that this would make the transition as seamless as possible with Saban actually being there.
You know, and you mentioned his name, Mike Norvell, which, look, I don't mean this as a joke. I'm actually being serious. I think if he became the next Alabama head coach, Florida State fans would go scorched earth because, one, they blame Alabama for not being in the playoffs, and now take away their head coach. I would have to seriously pray for the people down in Tallahassee if that happened. I've always felt like, and I saw Greg McElroy said that there's pretty much zero chance of this happening. I've always felt like Lane Kiffin would be the perfect guy just because Lane Kiffin does not care. I feel like Lane Kiffin would want that job more than Alabama would want him to. So that's also my opinion. But another one that's been out there, Kalen DeBoer. When you look at a lot of these names have been mentioned, even Dabo Swinney. No, he's not connected to Nick Saban, but he played at Alabama. So there's that connection there. Dan Lanning, even though we can cross his name off, the Kirby connection, the Saban connection, that's there. We talk about Lane Kiffin and Sarkisian, former office coordinators. Kalen DeBoer, what's kind of like your thoughts on his name being on that list, or what people are floating out there as potential candidates to replace Nick Saban?
Look, Kalen DeBoer is an excellent coach. I think that he has done wonders in his short time with Washington. He led them to, the playoffs. He's led them now to a national title appearance. I don't think that DeBoer would be the worst candidate out of everybody that, we've really seen named. However, I'm not convinced DeBoer, despite how often we've seen his name thrown around here, especially today, Thursday, that is. I find it a hard time, or I have a hard time believing that Alabama's first choice to follow Nick Saban would be a coach 2 years removed from the group of five, whose 2 years as a Power 5 head coach hasn't really produced any impressive recruiting classes, and somebody who's coming down now all the way from the Pacific Northwest. I'm not saying that all of these criteria have to be met, Phillip, but it just seems to me like he's a great coach that has created a winning culture at Washington. I just don't know if that's going to directly translate into what Alabama needs in a head coach. We're talking about some of the best recruiters in the country being in the SEC, and now even more so with Oklahoma and Texas joining the conference. Somebody, whoever is at the helm for Alabama, has to be somebody who can not just recruit well, but can out-recruit some of the best top-tier recruiters in all the land. And as things stand with DeBoer, I do not believe he is, able to do that at this point. I don't think that he's wholly incapable of doing it. I'm just saying currently, and especially considering the other candidates that have been named, DeBoer would not be my first choice to fill the Nick Saban head coaching vacancy at Alabama.
Well, and too, and see his name, Ed. Yeah, I know Mike Norvell doesn't have a connection to Nick Saban either, but still, he's in the Southeast, and look, Florida State recruits really like an SEC team, so that wouldn't be much of just from a culture, going for Florida State, Alabama wouldn't be as tough. But yeah, with Kalen DeBoer coming from Washington, Alabama, no connection to the SEC, that would be a tough situation. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. Perhaps through the weekend, we'll know who the next Alabama head coach. I'm still going to say, please, Alabama, do not name a coach until this podcast is out on Friday morning. That would be very beneficial to me. But anyways, AJ, I appreciate you coming on here. I told you 10, 15 minutes. We've gone 20. I feel like we could probably go another 20 on this conversation. But anyways, I appreciate you jumping on last minute, as I said when I introduced you there. But man, if anybody out there wanting to follow you online, the listeners and viewers, obviously the coverage at Roll Tide Wire for the search for the next head coach of Alabama, where can they find you and where can they find the website?
Well, they can go ahead and find the website, which is covering all things Alabama football and Nick Saban's retirement and the eventual Nick Saban replacement at rolltidewire.usatoday.com. And they can check me out on social media on X at SpurrFM, SPURRFM, like the radio dial.
All right, sounds good, AJ. I'm sure we'll have another conversation in the weeks to come. I have a feeling. But anyways, I appreciate you coming on the show, and I look forward to talking to you again sometime down the road.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. And, of course, that was my conversation with AJ Spurr over at Roll Tide Wire. So, of all the candidates, and look, recording this on Thursday night, let's hope by the Friday we do not have new coach yet. But Sarkisian's name has been mentioned. And I'm just going to say this as a guy that covers the conference, enjoys the conference. I kind of hope Sarkisian stays there at Texas. I do. But I do believe, too, if Sarkisian left Texas to go to Alabama, I think Arch Manning goes with him. I do. I really, really do. And then there's a whole new conversation with Jalen Milroe. That's the thing. I mean, this is going to be interesting because there's a 30-day period where when Nick Saban announced retirement, Alabama players can enter the portal, and then Alabama's going to go hire a guy that's got head coaching experience. So that's cool. That cycle starts for them. It's going to be an endless cycle basically until a coordinator gets hired for one of these teams. So it's going to be interesting. I know Dabo Swinney's name's been mentioned, which Greg McElroy said on Thursday that him and Lane Kiffin, zero chance. I don't know. I don't know if zero is the right thing. Slim chance maybe, but I would touch Dabo just because of his unwanting to touch the transfer portal and NIL stuff. So I think the college game may be potentially passing Dabo Swinney by if he doesn't change and kind of just accept what is right now. So it is it's going to be interesting, and we'll have more on Monday, I'm sure, on the Alabama coaching search. Perhaps maybe there'll be a new coach to talk about. So we are going to now switch gears. We're going to jump into the National Football League, and we are going to preview a wild card weekend. Very excited about the football games this weekend. But before we do that, I'm going to take a 1-minute timeout to let you guys know about some other stuff that's going on over at Digital Strategies, Wiregrass Daily News, and all that good stuff.
96.9 The Legend is your connection to classic country legends. But Digio Strategies has other options too. News Talk 103.9 is your source for America's top news and entertainment shows. Like Rick and Bubba in the morning, Glenn Beck from 9 till 11 a.m., and Clay Travis and Buck Sexton middays from 11 a.m. till 2 p.m. Sean Hannity, Lars Larson, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, and others fill your day with the latest news and views from America's top conservative voices. America at Night and Coast to Coast AM keep you company and connected throughout the night. Plus, Fox News, the Alabama Radio Network, and Wiregrass Daily News keep you informed with national, international, state, and local news. And with more musical choices like All the Hits 106.7 KMX, Today's Country 95.5 WTVY, and Music 107.7, Digio Strategies gives you more choices and more variety. Listen on air, online, and on our apps. 96.9 The Legend is just the beginning.
Everybody, let's now transition over to NFL, which the NFL had some big coaching departures as well. That's the last, not just this week, just the past few days. That's all it's been. Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, even Mike Vrabel in Tennessee. Of course, we know the Nick Saban news as we have gone over the first half of this show today. But joining me is Matt Barbato. You can check him out over at the Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros. We are going to be going through and previewing and slightly breaking down these playoff games coming up this weekend, Super Wildcard weekend. And Matt, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, Phillip, thank you for having me. It has been an eventful week for sure, but we can put the coaching carousel aside now. Thank you, Nick Saban, for your service. Enjoy your retirement. It's time for some games. It's time for games that actually mean something. So I'm so ready for this weekend.
Yeah, I guess we all expected Bill Belichick, right?
Right.
That was kind of like, the worst kept secret that him and the Patriots were going to part ways. The Pete Carroll one kind of caught me off guard. Did it catch you off guard?
Not a ton. I don't really. I mean, yes, they made the playoffs last year, but this is the third year in a row where the Seahawks have kind of fallen off a cliff at the end of the year. And, I think the Geno Smith experiment last year worked out, and it was a wonderful surprise. But the fact of the matter is, despite all the personnel that team has, their defense is still pretty lousy. The offense, it's just like, again, another unit with a ton of talent. You've got Ken Walker and DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and they couldn't seem to put it together. And I think just the way the year ended with Seattle losing that game to Pittsburgh in Week 17, I think that kind of had the writing on the wall for Carroll once they were eliminated. So, yeah, I think the game's maybe passed him by a little bit. Great culture guy, great, CEO of a program, but I don't think X's and O's were ever his strength, and I think he was getting exposed once his personnel went down.
Yeah, and he's an interesting guy because, this is also one of the best college football coaches, too, from
Right.
what he did at USC and then what he did at Seattle. He was so close, just to think about how close he was to having 2 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
So, that would put him in it completely opposite guys between him and Bill Belichick. I would like to see just like those two have a joint practice together, like they were coaching the same team. They're they're like co-head coaches. I just would like to see Pete Carroll's rah-rah attitude getting on Bill Belichick's nerves.
Yeah. I don't think that would mesh. I'm trying to think back in the day, maybe under like Parcells, they worked with each other because it seemed like everyone came from the Parcells tree. But I don't know if they ever overlapped. But yeah, that would be quite the contrast in styles.
So looking at these games, I'll let the audience know we're going to go in order, but we are going in order. But my plan was AFC first, just kind of get that one out of the way, and do the NFC, which I think the AFC is a little bit more compelling. I think not as much as an overwhelming favorite, in my opinion. But who would have thought the first game, which it seems, man, it feels like anytime the Texans are in the playoffs, they have the 3:30 NBC game.
Yes.
It's just every single time. But the Browns, with the Joe Flacco-led Cleveland Browns at 11-6, are playing the C.J. Stroud-led Texans at 10-7 this year. The Texans, the AFC South champions, because the Jaguars just tripped all over themselves. Cleveland's 2-point favorite here, though. The over-under is 44.5. Just what are your initial thoughts on this one?
My initial thought when I saw this game was, how do we have a playoff game featuring these teams? Just like, let's give them credit for everything they've overcome. The Texans go from a 3-win season last year to now winning the division in 10 games. And CJ Stroud is clearly should have been the first quarterback off the board, and he's been fantastic. And it's just an exceptional turnaround in a division that was more wide open than we thought. And then you've got Cleveland, who is just, God, remember when they were starting Dorian Thompson-Robinson against the Ravens in like week 4? Like, they have just Kevin Stefanski should get more votes for Coach of the Year. Mm-hmm. He won't win it. I'm sure it'll be like Dan Campbell or maybe Harbaugh. But man, he should get some votes because what they've overcome with all of their injuries on defense, the Deshaun Watson fiasco. Remember Nick Chubb? That was a week 2 injury. It's pretty incredible how we've got both these teams in a playoff game and in a rematch from Christmas Eve, where the Browns kind of pounded the Texans. That was the game where Amari Cooper had like 260 something yards, just ridiculous. So I think you'll see Houston come into this game with a very concerted effort to contain Amari Cooper. And it'll be curious to see how Joe Flacco, who again, just like Joe Flacco was in the playoffs in 2024, who's he going to spread the ball to? I think we'll see a lot of Njoku. I don't think Cleveland's going to have a lot of success rushing the ball, but I do think they'll be able to expose Houston over the middle of the field with guys like Njoku and Elijah Moore out of the slot. And while it's crazy to say this, I think I'm taking Joe Flacco on the road at 67 or whatever he is years old against the rookie head coach and rookie quarterback combo at home. CJ Stroud's had a tremendous season, deserved to be rookie of the year. I just think it ends against this Browns defense that'll benefit from the week of rest. And I think, while they haven't been good on the road this year, actually all of the Browns road games have gone over the point total, which is kind of weird for how dominant they are. You perceive them to be, but I think you get a more locked in effort here from Jim Schwartz and his group. And I just question how good the Texans really are. I don't think they've really played the hardest schedule. They haven't really beaten a ton of great teams. I think the Browns ultimately win this game. I think it's going to be a close one. I think it could be a high-scoring game, just given what we saw last time these two teams played. But, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy, and we'll look back at this on Saturday night and laugh. But I'm going with Flacco. I just think they're the more well-rounded team.
Yeah, I was about to ask you which quarterback do you trust more, the rookie or the chiseled veteran? But it sounds like it is the chiseled veteran Flacco. And look, Flacco now he's played well, but he'll give you some opportunities at some interceptions. In his 5 games, which they're 4-1 in their last 5, he has thrown 8 interceptions on the year, 13 touchdowns. So it's I think he had a 3 interception game a few weeks ago, but they still won. And you're right. Their defense is awesome. The best in the NFL, yards allowed per game and the pass, and Myles Garrett getting after quarterback. And I guess that's the kind of thing I worry about too with CJ Stroud, the pressure getting to him. One is the pressure of a playoff game.
Yeah.
And you're at home. And then number 2, you've got Myles Garrett breathing down your neck.
Yeah, it's a lot to ask for out of a rookie quarterback. But you know what? Stroud has defied the odds the whole way. He was passed up for Bryce Young. He led the Texans to the playoffs, and probably maybe he's just that type of guy who just, as an underdog, he lives up to the underdog status. And I think this will be a close game from like a pure betting perspective, and like picking this game, it's really tough. Like I think this is as close to a coin toss as we have on this slate. But yeah, I'll take the better coach, I think, in Stefanski too. And I don't love this Houston defense. I just don't. I think it's the worst unit in the game.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning with you too. I want to go Cleveland. I want to see Flacco going into the run. I think it'd be kind of fun too.
Maybe go to Baltimore in the divisional round. How about that?
Well, it would be the first time to play these playoffs. We have a former quarterback going against a team. We'll get to that one in a moment. Then the game that will not be on regular television. This will be on Peacock, 7:00 on Saturday night. The 6th seeded Miami Dolphins is wild. You go from being the 2 seed to the 6th seed in one game. They will be playing the 3 seed, the Chiefs, who are 11-6. The Chiefs are a 4.5-point favorite. The over-under is 43.5. I don't think weather is going to be a good situation for either team. And the Dolphins are just beat up at receiver. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are both hurt. Devin Achane, he's hurt too as well. And Miami's 1-5 against playoff teams. Their one win was against the Dallas Cowboys, which that was kind of one of them games that's kind of looking in the mirror. Miami and Dallas, kind of the same thing. And these two played each other in Frankfurt back on the 5th of November. Kansas City won 21-14, was up 20-0. Just does this feel like to you just it's not going to be an easy win for Kansas City because nothing's really been easy for them this year, but a game that they definitely should win.
Yeah, it's such a shame. I was so bummed when I saw Miami drew Kansas City because I was really, even like a Cleveland, any of these wild card teams, I probably would have taken my chances with picking them over the Chiefs, just given the way they're playing right now. And the fact is, I just don't think the Chiefs are that good. But given, Miami is just so banged up on the defense. And you mentioned Waddle and Mostert and Achane, who have all missed time, but the defense is really, really banged up. They're down to like Bruce Irvin, who they just signed this week to play edge rusher, outside linebacker. Like they are just totally decimated. The Dolphins went to Buffalo last year with Skylar Thompson and lost by 3 in another terrible weather game. I think people who think Casey's going to go out and blow out this Dolphins team are a little far-fetched in thinking that. But, yeah, I think Mahomes and Kelsey are going to be enough against a shorthanded defense to just, squeak out a win. It's kind of going to be an ugly game, I think, too. It's kind of good this one's on Peacock because I think you see Chiefs and Dolphins and you go, oh, my God, it's going to be in the 70s, points-wise. But I don't think so. And the Dolphins defense under Vic Fangio has been really scrappy. If they can just get their personnel a little healthier and, just plug some holes with the injured guys, I think they'll be able to contain this Chiefs offense because the whole point to containing the Chiefs offense is just taking away Travis Kelce, covering the middle of the field and go, okay, Rashee Rice, okay, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, okay, Kadarius Toney, go beat us. Now, Will Andy Reid maybe revert to a more running game approach in the playoffs? I think that would be a smart move. I think Isaiah Pacheco is a heck of a running back who just doesn't get enough opportunity. But I think maybe if Kansas City's going to go on a run here, they have to kind of change their identity and go to more of that run-oriented attack. And I'm not saying turn Patrick Mahomes into a game manager, but I think you need to let the run set up the pass here. And you got to throw another dimension into things when your weaponry is so shorthanded. And the Chiefs have an excellent defense. I mean, they've been great all year. So I think you can ride that defense and your running game to a win over the Dolphins. Now, can they go to who would they play next? Well, potentially who would they play? Buffalo, yeah. Yeah, could they beat Buffalo on the road with that? I don't know, but I think they will do enough to beat Miami. I think Miami keeps us close. And I think the game's going to go into the total too, especially with this weather. I mean, two in the cold is going to be a sight.
Yeah, and you talk about the Chiefs defense, getting out to quarterback, second in the league, 57 sacks on the year. And this has been my knock on Tua since college. Obviously saw most of his games. If he gets off his spot, if he's out of rhythm, he's not as good. He's very in a way Drew Brees like. I think Drew Brees could have been that way too as well. You get him out of his rhythm, he's not the same quarterback. And then again, the receivers, they're going to be playing. We know that, but they're banged up. Waddle and Hill, they just can't use their speed in this situation.
Right.
I'm going Kansas City. It's just because I agree with you. I don't think it's I don't think they blow them out because I don't think Kansas City can blow any of these teams.
No.
I don't think they could do it to Pittsburgh, which we'll talk about next, if they played them, if they were playing them instead of Buffalo playing them. But it's just kind of ride your defense, and I'm full agreement with you. So it should be interesting on the Peacock. And how many times we see Taylor Swift? Will we get a Taylor Swift concert on the Peacock coming in the future? Is that why they're doing this?
But you know what? Anything is possible in this NFL season. I could see it. I am going to be paying attention. I don't usually care about viewership for these games, but I want to see what the you're streaming an NFL playoff game on Peacock. I'm very curious to see how that'll be received.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to say the least. Now Sunday, the first game is also an AFC game. The 7-seeded Steelers get into the playoffs at 10-7. Look, say what you want to about this team. They're not fun to watch, just as from a fan standpoint. But Mike Tomlin gets it done. He's a great coach, and he proved it once again with 3 different quarterbacks this year. They'll be playing the Buffalo Bills. I like to call that the topsy-turvy Jekyll and Hyde Buffalo Bills. They're 11-6. Like I said, 12 o'clock CBS. Buffalo's a 10-point favorite. I think it's the biggest line in this playoff. The over-under is 35.5. So I don't think people are expecting the Steelers to score a lot. I'll just say this, and we probably won't spend as much time on this one. I have a feeling. I think it just if Josh Allen doesn't turn the ball over, this should be, like I said, not easy. No NFL game is easy, but this should probably be the most comfortable game anybody could have this weekend if Josh Allen is not, throwing 2 interceptions in the end zone in the first half like he did last week against Miami.
Yeah. Do you want a reason why this game could be really close?
What's that?
Have you looked at the weather report?
Yeah, that's the one thing. Yes.
I'll give it to your listeners here because I know you guys will never experience where you guys are, but we're getting it in Chicago tomorrow and into Saturday, and then I think it's traveling up to Buffalo. But here's what it says per AccuWeather: 24 degrees. All right, not bad. It gets worse. Lake effect snow, additional 6 to 10 inches, and then you've got winds 29 miles per hour with gusts up to 44 miles per hour. If you are the Pittsburgh Steelers, you are hoping for the worst Mother Nature has possible, because I think the weather could be the ultimate equalizer in this game, especially with a team like the Buffalo Bills that they're so talented, but they just go into these little fits where they just make every mistake in the books. And I could just see Josh Allen slipping and falling in a pile of snow and the ball flipping from behind him. And, who's even on the Pittsburgh Steelers defense? Minkah Fitzpatrick running it back for a touchdown, and the Steelers win 10-7. Like, that's what scares me. When the lines came out for this game initially, I bet Buffalo right away at -9.5, thinking like, it's time to get rid of the Steelers, and I just think Buffalo's going to roll them. But The weather could be something to really watch in this game because especially if you have high winds, that's going to take out the passing game for the most part. I mean, Allen's got a rocket arm, but if he's thrown into the teeth of 30-mile-per-hour winds, it's just going to be really hard to move the ball. Where I do think Buffalo will eventually kind of pull away is, well, one, we haven't even mentioned Mason Rudolph. I don't know how the Steelers score more than 10 points on their own without getting set up with beautiful field position off turnovers. And the other factor is I just think Buffalo, since they fired Ken Dorsey, and this is why I like them to make a potential Super Bowl run, they have gone to the ground game more. I think they're running at about 52% of the time now, as opposed to more like 41% when Ken Dorsey was calling the plays. And now with Joe Brady, who was you may remember him, the hotshot LSU coordinator who fizzled out in Carolina, they've gone to a more balanced attack, and I think that balance is what Josh Allen really needs. It kind of saves him from himself. And Pittsburgh's run defense, especially without TJ Watt, is just terrible. And I think Buffalo will be able to run the ball on them. But yeah, it could be close just because the weather's that bad and it just kind of throws a wrench into things. But yes, if the Bills take care of the ball, which is a big if, they should win.
Didn't and once again it was the Texans, so I'm pretty sure it was a 3:30 NBC game. One of his first playoff games, he had a moment where he was running down the field and he just all of a sudden just flung it backwards for.
He did. Yeah, I remember exactly the play. He was he saw a receiver, but I think he was getting hit or something, and maybe got turned around and just flipped it over his shoulder. It's just that, and that's the thing. It's I want to love the Bills, as just a fan, but they just go into these moments of just insanity.
So, are they the biggest threat to the Baltimore Ravens in your opinion?
I think so. From a talent perspective, I mean, turnovers and everything being equal, I mean, you look at the AFC, I don't think the Chiefs are going to go on a run. I don't really buy into any of the wild card teams making a run. I don't think Houston's making a run. So, yeah, I think kind of by default, it's Buffalo and Baltimore. Those are the top two teams in the AFC. I just don't see KC, Houston, Cleveland. Definitely not the Steelers, going on any sort of run.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's going to be interesting, though, if the Chiefs do win this week. Patrick Mahomes will play his first ever road playoff games next week. So
which is crazy.
It is. So that was up in the NFC at 3:30 on Fox, the first one. I will try to remain professional in this portion of the show. The Green Bay Packers, who just got into playoffs at the 7 at 9-8, will be playing the Dallas Cowboys, number 2 seed, who are 12-5 this year. Like I said, 3:30 on Fox. The Cowboys are a 7-point favorite. The over/under is 50.5. The Packers have won 9 of the last 10 against Dallas. Of course, that was Aaron Rodgers. But that was not Jordan Love. This is his first crack at Dallas. It was kind of interesting. Brett Favre struggled against the Cowboys throughout his career. Aaron Rodgers pretty much owned him. So Jordan Love, which side are you going to be on? I'll tell you, in my opinion, the Packers win or lose this, the season is success. No one thought they was going to be in the playoffs. With this young of a roster, the youngest team to ever make the playoffs. Jordan Love has been without Aaron Jones most of the year. Now, he's been back the last 3 weeks, 100 yards, all 3. Christian Watson's been in and out of lineup. Romeo Dobbs, the offensive line. The defense hasn't been great at times. So this is a win. They could lose by 30. I think this season is a win for the Packers. Do you see them having any chance in this game against Dallas?
Oh, yeah. Come on. It's the Dallas Cowboys in the playoffs. I mean, how can you not give Green Bay a chance? Honestly, what has Dallas done besides demolish, I think, the Buccaneers last year on the road? This current Dallas team, what have they done to earn our trust? I mean, really, and you made the comment about Dallas being a mirror image of Miami. They seem to just always come up small. And I still think of that play where against the Dolphins, Tony Pollard was he could have lunged into the end zone. He was right at the goal line, and he somehow turned his body around away from the goal line, got tackled short of the goal line, and then McCarthy calls a fullback dive, and the guy coughs it up, and Miami recovers. That is the Dallas Cowboys in the playoffs. Now, from a pure matchup perspective, yeah, I think for as bad as Green Bay's defense has been, I think that sort of bend, don't break Joe Barry style of defense could be very successful against a Cowboys offense that kind of relies on explosive plays from CeeDee Lamb. They can't really run the ball well, and that's where the Packers are pretty weak. And I just, as good as the Cowboys defense is, Jordan Love has been just awesome too. And that's with no weapons. I mean, it's crazy it's been a revolving door at all the skill positions. And he's putting up a tremendous season. So I do think the Packers have a very good chance to pull off the upset of the weekend. I took them plus the 7 points for sure. I don't know if I'll go quite as far as giving them the win, just because I do have concerns over that defense. But I think the Packers give McCarthy a little run. And how poetic would it be if the Packers end up upsetting Dallas at Jerry World and send Mike McCarthy to the unemployment line?
Yeah, that would be another thing. The Mike McCarthy, we don't have the Aaron Rodgers part of this anymore. So It's just the Mike McCarthy. That's the one connecting tissue of this, because there's really no one left in Green Bay that Mike McCarthy coached when he was in Green Bay. And I know, I guess it's just me. And with Jair Alexander getting hurt in practice this week, going up against CeeDee Lamb, that's a scary situation for the Packers, because you need all hands on deck, because no one's been able to guard CeeDee Lamb all year. 135 catches, over 1,700 yards, 12 touchdowns. So I kind of worry that the moment might get too big for Green Bay, because their first playoff game and this young of a team. But then again, you don't know what you don't know. So maybe they're just coming there and, ignorance may be bliss this week. So we'll see. I'm going to go with Dallas. I think Dallas is going to win the game. I could see it. I could see it being really close to because it's the Cowboys, or I could also see Dallas blow out. It's one of them things.
Totally. I mean, and last thought is just, we don't know what we don't know, but we do know Mike McCarthy and we do know Matt LaFleur, and I think I'll take him in the coaching matchup any day of the week. Even maybe not Joe Barry over Dan Quinn, but Dan Quinn in some of this team's biggest moments against the best offenses hasn't put out the best game plans either. So I think this game is going to be competitive the whole way.
Yeah, and I'll say one more thing on this. As a guy that's been a Packer fan since the 90s, I've seen Favre and Rodgers play. Everybody keeps comparing him to Rodgers. I see more Favre out of Jordan Love. I don't know. He's more risky and with the ball, which I actually like, because Aaron Rodgers was, I think, afraid to make a mistake in a playoff game. I don't think Jordan Love is that guy. That's what Brett Favre was. So, in 15 years, he'll be coming to your team, the New York Jets. So
and then wax poetic about COVID vaccines.
Let's jump into. I think outside. Okay, everybody, y'all know I'm a Packers fan. So, but outside of that, I'm looking forward to the Sunday night game the most.
Totally.
The 10-7 Rams at the 12-5 Lions. 7:00 NBC. The Lions are a 3-point favorite. Over under 51.5. The biggest over under this weekend in the playoffs. And so is Matthew Stafford returning to Detroit? But you got to look. Everybody's talking about that. This is a revenge game for Jared Goff.
Yeah, sure is. It sure is.
So what's in this matchup sticks out to you? I'm going to go ahead for you pick. I'm going to call it. I'm going to call an upset. I think the Rams are going to beat the Lions. But what are your thoughts on this one?
This is our first. What do we got? We went into 4 games so far. This is our 4th game, and this is the first disagreement. I'm taking the Lions, and I will explain why. Well, obviously, I'll explain why I'm on your show, but that was a dumb segue. But anyways, look at the Rams' schedule. And, you don't have to do this now, but your listeners, just pull up the Rams' schedule and tell me who they've beaten. It's a whole lot of nothing. The wins include Seattle twice, Arizona twice, the Giants, the Saints. They have done a great job considering how bad they were last year. And I give Sean McVay full credit. Considering how bad things flamed out last year, they've done a wonderful job of making the playoffs. Kudos to them. It was not easy to rebuild this roster that had just gone all in for a Super Bowl and felt the effects of that. But they went 1-6 against teams that made the playoffs this year. The Rams just did not do a very good job of punching up to superior competition. Now, that's not the only reason why I like the Lions. I think, the Lions defense, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's a great unit. I think it's hilarious that Aaron Glenn is getting head coaching interviews because this unit is really not that good. But they do two things well. They stop the run at a very good rate, and they are the best team in the league in terms of pressure rate. And the best way to beat Matthew Stafford is putting him under duress often because he's obviously not very mobile. And the same goes for Jared Goff, but the Rams have not been as good at generating pressure. And I think this is one of those games that gets decided in the trenches. Aaron Donald's great, but the Lions have one of the better offensive lines in the league. And the Rams defense, they just don't have a ton of personnel around them, around Donald, I should say. They're pretty inexperienced in the back end. So even without Sam Laporta, I think Goff is going to be the more comfortable quarterback in this game rather than Stafford, who I think will be constantly under duress. And I think it's just going to be a crazy home crowd in Detroit. I'm not saying the Lions blow out the Rams by any stretch. I think it'll be a good game. But, considering that Cooper Kupp hasn't quite been right, I think the Lions can take away the running game that sets everything up for McVay with his motions and his play actions. It's unconventional, Phil, because I've heard many people who are liking the Rams, and I've seen a lot of people bet them at plus 3.5, and it's driven the line down to Detroit laying 3 points. But I'm going to go against the grain here a little bit. I'm taking the Lions to protect at home. And then who knows, if the Packers do their job, we could get another rematch. It'll be interesting, but I like the Lions.
Yeah, they were a part of me. I was kind of hoping that the Rams would have lost, so then that you would have got the Packers going back to Detroit, where they've been proven they can win.
Right.
They did on Thanksgiving, but the Rams and the Lions. I mean, that's got to be the best storyline game of the weekend.
It's not Joe Flacco. Come on, no, absolutely, yeah. It's a pretty awesome story. I mean, it's hard to imagine. Think back to when this trade happened. It really worked out for both sides. Like it's about as good of a trade in terms of the end result as you could imagine. The Rams got their Super Bowl, and the Lions, yeah, they endured a tough first year with Goff, but they're on the rise now, and they're hosting a playoff game for the first time in 30 years, which might be the equivalent of a Super Bowl for people in Detroit. So, yeah, I think it's a home run for both sides, and obviously the Rams have won the Super Bowl from it, but yeah, it'll be another sort of way to pad the resume for one of these teams and who won that trade.
Yeah, I remember when that trade went down, everybody said, okay, Jared Goff will just be a stopgap quarterback for the Lions. He'll be there 1 year. They'll have probably a bad year. They'll draft a new quarterback. And then, look, this is his third year starting for him. So, right. Yeah, it's worked out both. I don't know if we need to talk about the Eagles and Buccaneers because I'm not 100%. I am not excited about this one. This is like, I am up here for the Lions and the Rams. I am down here for this one because Eagles at 11-6, defending NFC champions. They are heading the wrong direction. 1-4 their last 5. They have not played well since that. Really, most of the year they've won a lot of close games, and then last week this was a team that was trying to win last Sunday against the Giants and lost 27-10. They got embarrassed. Jalen Hurts is hurt with his hand. I saw on Thursday he had not thrown any all week. The receivers are hurt. This is a banged up team. I mean, but Tampa Bay, they're not attractive either. They won 9-0 against Carolina, but kudos to them winning the division. Baker Mayfield, after Tom Brady, I think everybody had this team as last place in the South, and they win the division. I mean, the Saints were the favorite, but this team was looked at as dead. I mean, there were people that had Carolina ahead of them. That's how bad people thought it was going to be. But I think the Eagles probably win. They got the better roster. They should win. I'm not confident they are a 3-point favorite, but anything entertaining or amusing or interesting about this matchup to you, Matt?
I think just the drama and the madness surrounding the Eagles. Like, kudos to Tampa Bay, kudos to Todd Bowles, kudos to Baker Mayfield. I don't think this team is really any good. I mean, they were good enough to win the NFC South, which, gosh, I mean, what a mess of a division. But, yeah, I just want to see if the Eagles, can flip the switch and reset for the playoffs, or is this really too far gone? And they are just totally out of sorts, and they complete the collapse with a what would be a terrible loss to, probably the easiest draw you could ask for a wild card team. Yeah, God, everything's just a mess. I mean, Jalen Hurts has been terrible against the blitz. That's where Todd Bowles really specializes. And this defense can't stop anyone. And they thought, going to Matt Patricia as defensive play caller was going to make a difference. I think it's made things worse. The Eagles have a lot of trouble in the secondary, so I could see Mike Evans and Godwin going off in this game. Yeah, I just don't trust Philly right now. I don't trust Nick Sirianni to commit to his running game. And I think that's where the Eagles have sort of fallen off. I think they've become too enamored with throwing the ball, and I don't think Jalen Hurts has been healthy all year. That's why his mobility and his rushing, other than the tush push, has been pretty limited. I'll take the Bucs just because I just feel like Philadelphia is broken, and you know what, the Bucs are at home, and I think they have enough playmakers on the outside to make the difference. But Baker Mayfield could throw 4 picks too.
Yeah, that's the thing about that one with Baker. You just don't know. So this is a 2-part question. First off, can any of these teams knock off the 49ers? And who do you like in the Super Bowl?
I think Dallas can, but Dallas has to get there. And even so, I mean, we saw Dallas sort of get demolished by the 49ers earlier in the year. I think if there was a team who could do it, maybe it's Dallas, maybe Detroit, just with like that Dan Campbell underdog mentality. But eventually, I think they're going to get just sort of caught up with their bad secondary. But I think it's sort of a 49ers runaway. I just think they are the top to bottom most talented team in the league. And I think as long as Brock Purdy's playing fine football, they will go to the Super Bowl, and I think they will win the Super Bowl over the Buffalo Bills, who, I don't know, pick a name out of a hat in the AFC right now. Buffalo has just been that Jekyll and Hyde team. I think they've been playing playoff football for the last 4 or 5 weeks. I think they just that level of urgency, I think they carry into this game or into the playoffs in general. And I think they have enough talent to beat Baltimore, even at Baltimore. We haven't seen Lamar Jackson do it yet in the playoffs either. So, I think the Bills have that talent up front if they were to play the Ravens to contain Jackson in his running game. And I think they'll dare Jackson to beat them with his arm in a playoff high leverage situation. So I will go 49ers, Bills, and I will take the 49ers. I think Kyle Shanahan finally gets his.
All right, it's going to be that's be a big month for them. That'd be a fun Super Bowl.
It would be a great Super Bowl, yeah.
Josh Allen finally getting there, and then of course 49ers being able to rectify those demons from a few years ago when they lost to Kansas City. But Matt, it's been a lot of fun. We've gone 35 minutes going through these games. If the listeners and viewers want to check you out online, where can they find you and all the work you're doing?
Yeah, so they can find me at fantasypros.com and bettingpros.com. Obviously, fantasy football season is over, but it's always time to look ahead to 2024. Or if you're in Dynasty Leagues, we have great content there. You'll see me more right now on the Betting Pro side, where I am breaking down a lot of these playoff games. I'm doing game write-ups for pretty much half of the playoff games. We're splitting them up with another colleague. So you can find me on there. I'll be breaking down all the action. This week, I broke down the Browns game, the Bills game, and the Lions game. Geez, I had to really think hard about that. It's been a long week. But yeah, fantasypros.com, bettingpros.com, and then on Twitter at RealMattBarbato.
And I'll tell people this. Yes, I am in Alabama. And everybody said, well, we can't sports bet here. But you get great information from Betting Pros if you just want to get a deeper inside look at the games, what's going on with these teams. So go check out both Fantasy Pros. I know there are plenty of people I know that play fantasy football. That's the key thing around here. But also the Betting Pro side, you can go over there. You can find out some great information on these games. But anyways, Matt, I appreciate the time as always, and I look forward to doing this again sometime down the road.
Phillip, I hope we do our annual Super Bowl preview again where I get the result dead wrong. I'm looking forward to it, and thank you for having me as always throughout the season.
All right. And AJ Spurr asked Matt Barbato. And just real quickly, if you want to know who I am picking, I'm going chalk. I think it's going to be Ravens versus 49ers. I think the top two teams on both sides are going to be the ones to get there. And I'm going to go with Matt pick here. I think the 49ers will get it done. Yes, I know they lost to the Ravens in the season. I think they learned some things there, and they'll take it there in playoffs. But it's going to be fun starting off on Saturday. And that's going to do it for this edition of the Phillip Jordan Show. Yes, a lot longer than what we normally do. It's really 2 episodes in one. Originally, the show was just going to be me and Matt, but with the Nick Saban retirement story, had to talk about that too. So I hope you will enjoy those conversations, and we'll be back next week. I got some pretty cool guests lined up. I guess I can go ahead and tell you. So we're going to continue as we did last week when AJ Spurr come on. Then recapping and kind of just talking about these SEC and college football teams. We'll get into Arkansas next week. We will talk more Alabama stuff. Bill Bender from the Sporting News is going to be coming on the show next week. I also, Blake Lovell from Southeastern 14 and Established a Pass podcast. We will kind of do a little Alabama Auburn basketball. We'll do some NFL playoff wildcard recap with Blake. Got Colin Lacey, Westwood 1. He will be at the Buccaneers and Eagles game this Monday night, and he will be on to talk about it. Connor Goodson covers Arkansas. That's where we'll be jumping in with that. So we've got some cool guests coming up, lined up for next week. I hope you guys will stay tuned. Please subscribe to the podcast. Anyways, I hope everybody has a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday or next week if Alabama has a new head football coach. You've been listening to and watching the Phillip Jordan Show on Wiregrass Daily News Sports.